Hello, and welcome to our weekly episode of the Roll Wise podcast. I'm Mike, the guy in the upper left, and I'm joined by my two pals in close proximity, at least on the screen. Say hello, guys.
Hi, I'm Brent. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff.
And welcome to this week's episode. So, we're going to be talking about a few things, but before that, I thought we'd do a little bit of housekeeping. First things first, we're going to take the week of the 20th off. So, if you happen to catch our episodes on the regular, we really do appreciate you taking the time to listen, and thank you very much for that. But it is a holiday week, and so we are going to be focusing on family, friends, and of course, in my case, I'll be focusing on eating some good food. I hope that extends to more than just me, though. So if you're looking for our stuff, we won't have a live stream or an episode available. I plan on eating a lot, especially since this year my little kid is actually now interested in food. So we're going to do a lot of stuff. Well, like last year, it was like all purees. I mean, I can't really puree a turkey.
You can actually.
Ugh.
It's true.
You just need a good enough blender.
I just
which is actually the answer to anything. You just need a good enough blender.
I feel like when you watch those recycling videos, when they have like they're like, oh, just throw it on there, and it just starts crunching it through. Like, I feel like a certain point, like certain foods, like a turkey dinner, like space pouch of food, just doesn't interest me as much as a plate of turkey dinner.
You just make a turkey smoothie, Mike. It'll be fine.
It's a wave of the future.
Yeah, get yourself some sushi grade turkey.
So sushi grade turkey, like that exists.
And obviously it doesn't come from America.
Get yourself some turkey sashimi.
I love me the sushi grade poultry jokes.
God, no.
In the famous words of one of my employees once, everybody likes their chicken medium, right?
Yeah, I love it. Like, I mean, not to get too far on a food tangent, but I do like sous videing poultry because you can cook it for the length of time you need to kill all the bacteria and have a juicier piece of chicken. And without getting into the food science and all that stuff, it did kind of freak Kelly out a little bit when she got her chicken a little bit more moist than she expected, because
she's just used to eating really dry chicken breasts.
It's
hard to dry out the dark meat. You got to really try to dry out a thigh. You can do it, but breast, man, it's like you've got like a 5-degree window between bacteria dead and
leather
and chicken pebbles when you cut it. You know,
yeah,
dry chicken that flakes off.
Oh yeah, it's true. So yes, so needless to say, though, we're more of a traditional turkey stuffing, all that kind of family. So we'll go enjoy ourselves that way. Okay. And of course, with maybe Black Friday, if I feel like being a consumer, I might pick up some more games and stuff. So we'll see. We'll keep a lookout. Maybe we'll share what games we find on Super Deal, because we didn't tell anybody about the Vason thing that was free for the 30th and 31st. I feel kind of bad at that.
Well, I think we forgot.
I actually found out on the 1st. So.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about it either.
No, I saw it and I was like, "Ooh, that's nice." And I'm like, "Too bad I already own a copy." But
with Vason stuff, I was like, I'm never gonna run that, so I didn't. I was like, nah. I enjoyed the game, but it's not something I'll ever run.
Okay, and so back on track here. We'll get away from turkey and stuffing and get back to planning and talking. Today's topics, we're actually going to be talking a little bit about our Monster of the Week wrap up. We're going to be finishing up like kind of how the game went, kind of our thoughts about the game system in general. It's not a new game or anything like that, but of course, it does seem as though there's a pretty good chorus of people that sing high praises for it. And so you'll have to see what we say. We'll also talk a little bit about GM tools and how we prep for our games. I think that, Monster of the Week gave some insight as to just what it's like on the other side, especially if you played a lot of D&D, or if maybe D&D is your only game, you'll have a very different experience playing Monsters of the Week and the kind of prep that you use to get ready for it. And then also, we're kind of up in the air as to what we're going to play next. We have some ideas, but if you have some suggestions, or you'd like to see us play a game, maybe a game that you've been interested in but don't necessarily want to expend the effort, you want to see some pros,
sure,
some professionals break open some cellophane and open some role-playing books, we would be more than happy to give almost any game a try. So just let us know what your thoughts are. What would you like to see us play? And we'll try to make one shots for it, so it's not like some extended campaign. Unless you want some extended campaign, let us know. Throw a comment in there.
Yeah, if you're interested in extended campaigns, please let us know, because we talked about it a little bit, but we're kind of unsure if like long plays are something that people want to see, or if we'd rather see us just kind of do short, kind of concise play one shots.
Yeah, because there are some campaigns out there that have achieved some legendary renown among people that have run them, and a lot of these longer campaigns I actually haven't played, so I would be curious to play through them. Something like Massive Nyarlathotep. Yeah, I hate the shotgun of consonants and vowels that came out with this stuff. But yeah, we could play something like that if we wanted to play that for several years, or
until we get tired of it.
Something else.
That's the caveat that I will make, is we would play it until
we lose
forever,
steam,
or until we get tired of it. That's the truth.
The tough part could be is just some of those long form campaigns could, some people might say, oh, it takes 6 months. Well, that's 6 months at 5-hour sessions every week.
Right.
And we just don't have that.
And and we stream, we do the live stream. That's always the challenge, right? Is when you get older, you have less opportunities to game all the time. So
so we'll see what we can do to make 2-hour streams interesting, and we're trying our best. Obviously, we've got a few games under our belt now, and I think we're getting better. So with that, why don't we start with the GM tools and how to prep for the games? I've been talking a little bit, so who wants to kick this topic off?
Well,
to Brent, since he runs way more games than I do. You both do. In fairness, I run just way less.
I guess where I would start is I would essentially, with running Monster of the Week, I would ask you. I would say, what do you think are some of the differences between prep for the Monster of the Week game and say you're currently running the Fabula Ultima game for us, a different group of including us. What are some of the differences in prepping those games that you kind of do you think?
Well, so it's interesting because I think that I think Fabula Ultima and Monster of the Week are going to have a similar preparation vein now. I do think that it's kind of like a spectrum almost to me at this point, is that Monster of the Week very much feels like the emphasis is on improvisation and playing the game to see how the story plays out. And I feel like with how that goes, it basically means, sharpen your tools in your tool set. Think about interesting NPCs, think about how scenes, play out a little bit, but just, I feel like focusing more on just be able to create a scene and have it being descriptive is much more helpful in Monster of the Week versus say D&D, where, you kind of have to almost, the emphasis is preparing to know every rule and every book on every planet. It gets a little bit much, but I think in Fabula Ultima, the reason I say that Monster of the Week has kind of informed a little bit of a change in how I prepare for that. And maybe you guys saw that. I think our session last night was actually better than our previous week's session. And I think, I don't know if you guys felt the change a little bit, but I think you probably noticed my NPCs are acting differently than they did originally and all that kind of stuff. Maybe not. Maybe
a little, yeah.
Maybe there's some stuff, but I'm taking some of the lessons learned from Monster of the Week in that game, because they both play cinematically, right? And that's kind of the theme for it. And I feel like the difference between Fabula Ultima, and the reason I say they're on a spectrum, is because Fabula Ultima definitely loves it when you play with a meta plot and a threat and all those kind of things. Whereas Monster of the Week has an organic growth pattern that you do. So like you guys might decide the type of group you want to play and like initially and all that stuff, but it really discourages you from, as the GM, having this really strongly formulated idea to say like, I mean, I can't really say what the end boss or the end arc, story arc in Buffy or anything like that is, because I didn't watch all those. I'm sure many people are going to be like, oh, this heretic didn't watch Buffy.
Well, I mean, I mean, those shows aren't written that way. They're not written with a meta plot in mind. Episodic shows usually are written with a meta plot in mind.
Not always, but some do. Some have a meta plot that comes through or something like that.
If I remember the end of Buffy from who I knew that was listening to it, who was watching it, there was not really a plan for the end.
All I remember is there was a musical episode, but moving on. But the idea being is that Fabula Ultima does encourage that meta plot and drives you to it, which can discourage you a little bit from the like roll the dice to see how the game plays. You kind of still have to prep in that like semi D&D fashion where you create how do I say this, like you have NPCs that you need to create, you have scenes that you need to develop, and I'm not saying that you should be railroading the game, but it does have a far greater potential that you guys can create a situation where I might have to end the game earlier because you end up in totally unprepared territory kind of thing, and the game just isn't very helpful when it comes to that. And so I think in that way, that's why it kind of sits in the middle, is because the benefits you can take from Monster of the Week to the game allow you to have a little bit of improvisation in how you kind of deal with the characters and all that, because it's not a heavy dice rolling game, but it borrows heavily from the idea of there needs to be your big badass bad guy at the end that you've already kind of created. You already have to have the villain
you met or know about.
Yeah. And so it's a weird place. And so I think that knowing that, and that's why when we do the GM scenes in Fabula Ultima, I've already kind of expressed who a villain is. At least could be the mid boss, could be the end boss. I mean, it really depends on how the campaign plays out. I think that really the problem I ran into with that, if I'm speaking honestly about it, is that it was less of a preparation thing. I just got off on the wrong foot because you guys wanted to play a revolutionary game, but we've definitely detoured into babysitting and ghost busting.
Oh yeah, no, that is one thing that I noticed about the game, is that we have strayed quite a bit from our original, I think what our original plan was.
Yeah. And see, and that's why I think that it can be a weakness in that type of game to have that meta plot, is because how do I get you guys back on track to go back to the thing that we originally discussed as being like kind of the objective of the game. So it's interesting. But yeah, so long story short, Monsters of the Week, a lot of it tries to get you to improvise. There we go. Improvise a lot of the kind of things. So you want to be light on your feet and know kind of the rules by the back of your hand, like any game, but it doesn't have a ton of rules. And fortunately, the book actually tells you as the keeper what you should do, which I think helped a lot. Because if you're like reading the player's handbook, everybody has the same set of rules. And as the DM, you're just like, you go into a room. Here's what the room looks like. Roll some D20, I guess. Sure.
Yeah.
You fail at everything. The story stops here.
You fail at everything. You have chosen poorly.
So, does that answer your question, Brent, or did you have?
Yeah, I think so. How does that differ from Vaesen then? How does that differ from how you ran the Vaesen game?
Well, I think that Vaesen and that game are probably very similar. And I think the lessons I learned from this is that in Vaesen, it's a very railroady mystery for how at least the mysteries I was reading were written. And so it was the idea was like you had 3 scenes, you had a countdown clock and everything like that. And it said, and kind of what happened is that if you veered from that, your game became a little bit harder to manage. And with the game having some janky combat and stuff like that, combat really wasn't a solution, because it could be fine, or it could be just you die, like you just died. There was no safeguard against your characters just perishing in a terrible decision you made. And so I think that in terms of Vaesen, I don't think it has to be. I think it just, with the type of dice you roll in Vaesen, you could play Vaesen and have it be a very similar outcome to Monster of the Week. And probably there probably was some influence from that in there. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're both rules light.
They're both rules light narrative games.
Yeah. So,
and the dice rules really kind of influence. They're games where the dice rolls really kind of influence where the story goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think that in Vaesen, it wasn't as clear to me how the dice rules impacted that. Whereas in Monster of the Week, it felt like it made a little bit more sense to me. And it might just be my reading it in Basin.
No, I think that's the advantage of that's one of the advantages of the Power of the Apocalypse game is I thought at first when I first read the versions that I've read is I thought it was limiting at first, but it's really kind of freeing to have the exact these are the moves that they can do. This is what will happen.
Mhm.
And the partial success and the full success and then the no success. You can, the fail forward mechanic is very good in that. And Vaesen tried to do that, but didn't commit to it. I feel like, which is something that I see in the Mutant Year Zero a little bit is it doesn't commit to the full on thing that they did with Powered by the Apocalypse. But as far as me preparing for games, I arrange it more on the idea of story beats. There's always milestones or beats that I want to hit. And then I kind of let the players get to those beats organically through what they do. That's usually my prep is I prep the main scenes that I want to hit. Now, the one problem with the way that I do things is there are times where they will go off and not be in situations where I can hit those story beats. And usually at that time is when I have to either replan how the story beat plays out or kind of improv a little bit. But mine involves more just kind of improv and thinking on the point just because I don't fill in the middle. I fill in the main story beats and then kind of let the players with me tell the story in between to get to those story beats. That's my prep usually. Which one of the things that I struggle with a lot, one of the things that I struggle with like a D&D style game where you have to make all the NPCs have to be statted or the villains all have to be statted because their decisions could eventually lead to combat regardless of what happens. Or you need target numbers or something off of their stats. That's one thing that's hard for me is I have to sit down and then I have to create all of these people and I can't just generate stats. That's not how my brain works. So I wind up fleshing out a dozen characters that the players may or may not talk to, and then it's just that's why those games are more exhausting for me prep wise is because it's harder for me to do that than improvise sometimes. So
that's hours. I mean, that's hours of prep, right? D&D or any combat heavy system, I think, really, because you don't exactly know what the players are going to do, and unless you just have super cops running around town, you know what I mean? That are like, yeah, we just happen to have a level 20 fighter that's just sitting around, and he comes out and you try and do stuff and you can't do anything, and he stops you and kicks you out of town.
Or even not combat. A lot of the you have to kind of know how characters are built in D&D if people want to use diplomacy checks on them or stuff like that.
Sure.
You have to know, or spells, you have to have their saving throws figured out or their skills figured out or whatever. And it's just a lot of extra time you have to make to build those NPCs. And if you do what I've done sometimes, which is rely on pre-generated characters, like I said last week, how town guards, just having the town guards have stats in the book is a miracle for me. That's good, but I start relying on those, and so all of them start coming across as the same because they're all statted exactly the same because that's what I use. So then if you're doing that, there's that moment where you have to work and go in and
did you notice all these guys have 8 hit points?
Yeah, exactly. I need to go change these guards now, and that's
exactly. But you run into that with a lot of D&D type stuff because it's and not to say that D&D is bad for it, but you do from the strategic component of D&D, because don't get me wrong, there are some games that some D&D games where everything is very role play heavy, and you're not going to fight the goblins. You're going to try to negotiate with them or do something because goblins have more personality than we kill. But then there are other games when they go, goblins have 6 hit points, and they're and they're not running a pizzeria, and they
run into the horde of kobolds.
And you run into them because they have 4 hit points each or whatever, and that's fine. And I think that you could since they do have hit dice, you can't roll for every single one of them,
right?
But if
people do. I mean,
some people do.
I've been in those games.
Yeah,
where
you can.
The GM's turn, there's 40 kobolds, and the GM has his turn, and he's like, "All right, this is going to be a minute."
Yeah, and I think
I'm a huge fan of when you have a lot of enemies, having them attack in groups. You know.
Yeah, which is another problem. Well, God, I'm shitting.
But that has its own set. That has
Right.
its own set of issues.
Well, yeah, because then, like, what if they all get lucky?
Oh,
And
it's a crit. So that's 10 crits. You take 10
right.
crits.
Oh
Can you do
God,
that? Are you
these
still
five,
alive?
these 5 kobolds all hit. Oh, and they all critted. Oh, and they
Oh,
all
and they
rolled,
all did max damage.
and they
Look
all
at
did
that.
max damage. Oh,
Yeah.
how unfortunate.
Action economy in D&D really is the main villain.
It is. Action economy is the main villain, both against both parties. Because if you have bad guys that out action economy the good guys, they will die. And if the good guys always have more action economy than the bad guys, the fights just aren't challenging.
Yeah. Well, and so I think you're, when the way you talk about the story beats, Brent, I think that's an interesting concept to have like these simple milestones, like because when you're playing a game, even if it's a campaign or just a one shot or everything like that, you still follow the concept of just your general story arc. You have your introduction, your climax, your wrap, your end, and all that kind of stuff, and to kind of know where those fall on that, I think is very, very helpful when plotting how it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you're always going to fall victim to, if maybe it's just our group that is just like, I believe that door has an important next step that we have to discover.
Oh yeah, you totally have to be ready to ad lib shit.
Mike's never given a door a color, but why did he say that door was green? I think we should open it.
Well, there is a famous campaign went Over the Edge where I played with 2 people where they became obsessed with a weird painting in their apartment. And
what
derailed my idea completely with this weird painting that I put in there just as ambiance.
The painting, and I'm not defending me and the other players' actions.
I wasn't gonna name names,
but
it wasn't me. That's
all I'm saying is that the painting. The problem is the painting had too much description. You actually gave us art for it and made it symbolic of something greater than it was. So I'm going to go out here and say one last thing about prep is don't over prep background information on accident, because it was cool art. And I think if you would have known that that's how we would react to how the art was, you could have probably accounted for the fact that we would do something with it, because we might not have done anything. But the fact that you were like, oh, this is really cool art, and here's the art, and we're like, this is highly symbolic of everything we are doing in this town.
I expected something. I did not expect it to be all of a sudden the heart of the campaign.
Right.
Because like the point of that specific thing in this game was I was introducing my own setting, and the idea was to give you guys a base of operations, and B, to remind you guys every day how weird the place was, like not just in general, but like specifically like what you guys were involved in. And then you got obsessed. Which I guess
I'm not going to say obsessed.
Well, you didn't, but the other character did. Remember, because he actually, because I actually had him get sucked into the painting. He got so obsessed by it.
It's true. It was a very weird game. It was like a supernova. It was very bright, and then it ended.
Over the Edge is a very weird setting, and we will have to do a one shot on it sometime. I was thinking about that today.
So I guess with that being said, and ending on our fixation on paintings and how no GM can prep for weird characters.
And I'm going to add something to that. I'm going to say, even if you don't over prep something on accident, you can sometimes throw something in there that is just passing flavor, and just be ready for your characters, your players, to occasionally just throw a nutty and just decide that that's what everything that matters. That goblin that you don't expect to ever have to do any lines for, that's the guy they might want to talk to forever.
That's their new fixer.
Or bring him with them.
Yeah.
No, he's part of the party now.
He's a hireling.
Or we decide to have a 2-hour haggling with the merchant conversation.
Yeah.
I believe we did that once, and that was a canned adventure, I think.
Or this butter knife. This butter knife is the secret to everything that's going to happen. Yeah.
Or you have a player that steals all the silverware because he knows it's valuable.
Yes. Or leaves the party.
Well, you do have to fund that magic fixation somehow.
Wait, the town's empty? I go to every house and steal the silverware.
That doesn't seem like anything anyone here would do, but
That doesn't seem like wizardly behavior.
whatever. Got to pay for that fix.
Yeah.
Don't think money. You don't think magic grows money.
Boy.
Okay, so with that, we could transition to Monster of the Week and just kind of our post-op or post-mortem.
Post-mortem.
There we go. Post-op. Oh, yeah, I feel better, doctor.
When Monster of the Week wakes up, we'll have to check on it.
Yeah. So I think that in terms of just, I think we have two perspectives here. We have the keeper perspective and we have the hunter perspective. And I think I know I've talked a little bit about Monster of the Week, and even today I talked a little bit about it. And I might talk about some of those points again. But how, from a player perspective, what was Monster of the Week's like strongest, I guess, most compelling reason that you'd say I really like this game because of X? Like, what really drew you to it?
So I've never played a Powered by the Apocalypse system game. I'm glad that we started with Monster of the Week because as we were playing, there being enough rules to feel like there's a structure for my character, but not so many rules that I couldn't come up with things that sort of fit into the broad categories. I thought it felt like I had freedom, even though, thing A happened and then thing B happened. We went from A to B to C. You know what I mean? It felt like once we got to the destinations, though, we had some agency over what our characters did. And I never felt like, oh, I want to do this thing, but I can't, use one of the specific moves that are in the rules, because I think it's a really nicely written rule set. I felt like I had a lot of freedom as a player, but I didn't have to look up an inordinate amount of crap either.
Right.
It wasn't. We did do a little bit because none of us had played it, and Mike, you hadn't been the keeper on a. So there was a little bit of looking up some stuff and can I do this and exactly how does this work, but I just had a lot of fun playing because I felt like I did more playing than dice checking or looking up rules. Nothing against dice checking. I know I keep
it's fun to roll
going back to that, but just throwing dice isn't necessarily playing.
There's three things that stand out to me that I kind of thought of, and I put in categories just right now in my head. One, I think it was really cool because you really got into kind of the character's skin just based off the easy character creation. I felt like I knew who my character was based on the selections that we did. And it allowed me to kind of, in the week where I was thinking about him, it allowed me to kind of find who he was. Snarky asshole. I mean, might just kind of be me too, but it had, it
had some meat on those potatoes.
I don't smoke though, so there's the difference. The second thing is I really like the feeling of I didn't feel like we could ever really, like, we could fail, but we wouldn't necessarily get stuck. We were constantly in motion. We were constantly a bit able to advance the story. We didn't get to the point where we were like, I don't know what to do. We always had something if we could fall back on, like we could always say, okay, well, I'm just going to investigate because I don't really know where we need to go. And then we can get clues that way, which I think is a really cool mechanic. And I think it's really good for players because I feel like in a mystery, players' brain cells just die off. And
it's good when you find clues, though. It makes you feel like you're making progress.
It makes me feel like the character's doing it, not like you're depending on me to figure out how to solve a murder. Is what I like about it. Like, I guess that's one of the biggest things is like I feel like there's sometimes in games where player knowledge becomes like a basis for character decisions, and like because I'm not an FBI agent, like I'm not good at finding clues. Like I'm not good at searching that stuff out, whereas my character should be. And I feel like that one, I feel like Monster of the Week does a pretty good job of mimicking that, where it's like your skills allow you to make kind of those skill assessments that you as a player might not have, but your character would. I think that was good. And then the last thing is I didn't feel like anything. I feel like the numbers the numbers, like your cool and your charisma and stuff like that, I feel like they give you an idea who your character is without being something that totally hobbles your character. Like that -1 that I had in weird didn't make it feel like my character was incapable of doing anything in weird. I still felt like I could possibly do something if necessary, and I still knew things about things that were weird. I didn't feel like it affected my character that way, which, in knowing me, and those that have listened to the podcast probably know this, like I'm not very, like I suck at rolling dice, although we did roll really well in Monster of the Week for some reason.
Well, we did.
That's true.
But so a lot of times what I will try to do is I will try to mitigate like negatives. Like in D&D, I always try and play, I don't play characters usually that have super high bonuses because I don't dumb stat things. I usually have 10s and stuff, so I don't have a negative, right? Or in like Fabula Ultima, I took the one where it's all D8s instead of D10s and D6s. And sometimes I feel like that's a disadvantage because I'm never going to have that like high roll. But in this, I didn't feel like having those negatives impacted my character in a way that made him not feel like a good character, which sometimes in those other games I do, which is what I really like that too.
So, and this is kind of an interesting thing that you guys had mentioned, and I want to pick on one part there, because you guys felt like you fell into these characters in such a short period of time. I think at a far greater level than I've seen you fall into other characters that you played that had much more freedom of choice in terms of how you build the characters. And I think that I hope that makes sense, because I felt like you guys really got into this characters, even though you really only had 6 or 7 choices that you made on a character sheet. Do you feel the way that Monster of the Week like kind of narrowed the choice for those archetypes, helped you define who you were? Does that make sense?
I think that's one thing that I noticed about when I read Monster of the Week and I read Cult, which are both played by the Apocalypse modified games. Is one of the things that I felt is that when I read it a few times, like the first time I read it, I was like, oh, this feels like totally limiting. Like people are limited just to these moves, or people are limited to this stuff about their character. But what I realized is sometimes when you have all of the options in the world, like you just don't pick something. Whereas when you have something that kind of limits and funnels your character down, it makes it so like, oh no, I know who this person is because I picked these things and I kind of know who they are. It's one of those, it's freedom. What do they call it? Freedom through limitation, I think is the term I've used. Where you feel more creative because you're limited, because they've freed you to be more creative where it matters by taking away some of your choices that don't.
Sometimes you can sometimes I can overthink things. How about that in character creation, when it feels like, oh, I can literally do this and I can have this quirk and this and this and this and this. I think sometimes I need some walls, right? I need some things that I can bump into. It's like either it doesn't matter, or it's not going to come up, or it's not intrinsic to the character's, playability. I thought the character creation helped me just kind of get a feel, because I'm not one of those guys that comes in and is like, oh, I've thought about this for weeks and I finally know what I'm going to play in this game. And, I'm more spur of the moment. And I think having some limitations actually helps me. They nudge me in some ways, or restrain some of the stuff where I, just go wandering off into the parts of a character that don't matter.
Well, and I think you guys still wandered off into stuff that didn't matter, but it made it enjoyable. Like when you guys just kind of arbitrarily decided that Jeff had a brown van on blocks with a, spray paint wizard shooting a spell that he was fixing.
That cost a lot of money, man.
I mean, but it was just something that I felt like you guys developed as part of your characters
and the cab.
Very quickly in the cab. Like, oh, of course you would have a car. You're not going to worry about the fact that you have a car or not. You just have a car, like, because who gives a shit? Like, right. But in other games that are much more granular in how they've decided to have resources,
that's a resource.
You would go, oh, your resource score is 1, so that means you live in squalor
and poverty.
So I'm sorry you don't even have the background.
You're not even cool enough to have a car up on blocks in front of your house.
How much gold do I have?
You start with a negative to your gold resource pool, and therefore you have literally you owe money to a crime family.
Yeah, and you have the shit on your back, and that's all you have. You have a shirt, you have your underwear, you have some pants, and that's it. You are a homeless hobo. And I think that's interesting. And I think that's good. Like, that's one of the things that I like about the more narrative games is like, trust your players to not be like, oh, I'm rich, I don't have to be a detective now. It's like, no, that's not the point. They want to play the game usually, so I feel like some of that stuff doesn't become, and you could tell when somebody's going to start pushing it, like when people start saying, can we use all of our research points to own a magical item that'll kill everything? You can tell when they're trying to push it.
Push the edgelord. I still laugh about that short you sent me, because I've seen that before, and I just, this edgelord who's a fighter, warlord, ninja, gloom, stalker, assassin. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you will, and there are times like, and there's definitely games that encourage it. Like, I remember I ran a werewolf game once, and one of my players played a character that just was the sexy cool loner, and like the werewolf, the like White Wolf games, they encourage that to a degree. Like, make a character who's so much more cooler than you that you wouldn't want to hang out with your friends.
Yeah.
And that was what made the games hard sometimes. Is like, this really isn't a game where you can like, sure, you're a group of people, but they all hate each other. Like, so they don't want to help one another do anything.
Yeah.
So
no, and I think that's interesting, and I think that it, when you look at just like cohesiveness between the players and everything like that, I thought that was very fascinating to me, that because of how the archetypes are built, you can only have one of any of the different hunters. Like, you could only have one gumshoe and you could only have one spellslinger. That's just how it works, because there was because the premise of you being the best in that particular, like the apex of that particular person type, it was interesting to me. I never really thought about that, but you would never go into a D&D game and be like, oh, well, you have a fighter and then another person wants to be a fighter, and you'd be like, sorry, he's the apex fighter at level 1 and you're something that could use a sword but not a fighter.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that's weird about some of those games that are more heroic, is because that's basically what they're saying. Is they're saying you as a fighter are better than a soldier because you are a fighter, capital F IGHT. They are a soldier and you are better than them. And like, so they're kind of wishy-washy about it, because
then you're level 1 and fuck,
because you're level 1 and you're not really that good at it, and 2, like, another guy could play the exact same sort of fighter as you. And while I hate I hate in most games, I don't mind it Monster of the Week so much, I guess, just because of the way the game is written, or Cult, but like, I hate that in D&D where it's like you can't have a party of bards, like, but there's not enough variety in D&D either to like in Monster of the Week, there's 16 playbooks or whatever. Like, chances are you will find something else. If you're like, oh, I wanted to play the gumshoe too, chances are you can find something that either is kind of like a gumshoe, like, oh, you could just play an expert or a professional or something like that.
You'd take it a little different,
right? Exactly, and just take a little bit of a swerve on it, but D&D doesn't do that. They don't commit to that idea that you are the archetype. And that's one of the reasons why, like, Earthdawn I always liked a little bit better, because it's like, while you're not the only warrior, like, the things you do are magic. Like, you are better than normal people because what you're doing is infused with magic. You're not just a fighter, you're a warrior archetype.
You're a badass.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess in terms of like expectations, because none of us had played a Powered by the Apocalypse game. As a player, do you feel like that experience was enjoyable enough that you'd be open to other Powered by the Apocalypse games, or do you think like Monsters of the Week?
There's other one. Go ahead,
Brent.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, okay.
Hey, we haven't done that in a long time. Give us a break.
Yeah, we haven't.
Go ahead.
We've gotten much better. I would be open to playing more Monsters of the Week. I'm not saying that I won't play other Powered by the Apocalypse games, because I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now. I think that's the cool thing about what we're doing with the live plays and the one shots, is we're getting to dip into all these systems. But I have played enough things that have common rules where one is amazing, 2 or 3 of them are pretty good, and one of them is kind of, for whatever reason, not my cup of tea. How about that?
Yeah.
And I have some fear that I would feel that way about some of the other Powered by the Apocalypse games. Maybe I'm wrong. Brent, have you got a little more experience in that area?
Well, you're gonna have to try Cult at some point, which is also powered.
Well,
by
that's
the
fine.
Apocalypse.
I'm
but,
not saying I won't. I'm saying I fear.
But I think one of the strengths of Powered by the Apocalypse is like Cult is quite a bit different than Monster of the Week. Like it's D10s instead of D6s. There's a wider range of what's going to happen. So it's a very flexible system. But I agree with you. Like I would love to play more Monster of the Week. I think that was a great game. I love it. I look forward to running a Cult game, which is loosely Powered by the Apocalypse. But like other games like Apocalypse World, like the original Powered by the Apocalypse game, like I almost have no interest in playing Apocalypse World because I feel like everything that they tried to do at Apocalypse World, they do better in the newer games like Monster of the Week. Because I think the playbooks are better. I think the focus is better. Whereas I feel like Apocalypse World is more scattered. I've never looked at Dungeon World. Is that that's the other big one? I've never looked at Dungeon World. I'm sure it's fine. Maybe we should try it because it's a D&D with Apocalypse World rules.
Sure.
And again, maybe it does exactly what I've said that I don't like in D&D because there only could be one fighter, there only can be one druid, and you are the fighter and the druid, not just But I love Monster of the Week. I really enjoyed it. I think you did a really great job running it. I really enjoyed playing it. And I look forward to it. Made me look forward to running the Cult game a little bit more too. So
hey, that's a win. If you got more excited about one of the games that you were planning on running, then I'll just
yeah. No, it was good. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was maybe one of I've had a lot of fun with that game. Like it was very fun.
I think I definitely got you guys at the end though with that apology that the professor started doing. It was
also good for me because my character wasn't a character who's like, well, we can't let him kill her, or we can't let her kill him. My character was very much a character who was just like, well, no, it sounds like he kind of deserves what's going to happen next.
Well, after what she did to me, if you'd have said we can't let her kill him, I'd have said we can't actually stop her. If she decides to do this, all we can do is watch.
Yeah, you got me. Like I did not think that was the root of the story at all. So
yeah, no, I lost it. My character was I had to throw him out the window.
And I thought about it, and unfortunately, that was an improv apology that I put together right on the spot. So
it was good.
I feel proud of it. And I think you guys kind of answered a lot of questions, at least from playing. And I think I only have really just a couple things to say as a keeper that I can add to this. I mean, I feel like I can gush about Monster of the Week a lot more than I anticipated I would, because I feel like for something so simple, it's like this is where that execution is everything kind of thing, where the idea is good, like playing a game that's based on your favorite monster-esque TV shows. That sounds fun, but the way it executes in such an organic and simple way, and I honestly feel like if you were a new player playing and you were just getting started with RPGs and somebody said go play D&D, I would literally be that asshole in line at the game store being like, no, fuck you, get Monsters of the Week, you'll enjoy it way better if you like that type of setting. And I think you'll learn as a D&D as you'll learn some things as a keeper, that if you want to play D&D later, it will just entirely change your approach to how you play D&D because of how it taught you to be fans of your players. Not to say that not to say that if you want to play D&D, I'm not going to stop you, but I feel like before I played Monsters of the Week, I'd be like, yeah, play D&D. Everybody could start on D&D, but now I'm like, nah, play Monsters of the Week. It is best. It is way better for intro level keeper people.
I would say this is a good game. I would say this is a game that I kind of agree on. Normally, games with a lot of improv, I kind of think is hard for new players because like that on the spot thing is hard. But with this game being one where if If you don't know what to do, you can kind of roll and get a clue
Mm-hmm.
that kind of guides you into the role playing. Even I think like we said when we closed the game out on Monday. At first we were like, I want to investigate the mystery. Like we were saying the names of the moves. But even by the second time, we were like, well, I want to look around the office and see if there's any clues as to what's going on, which should be and then investigate a mystery through that. Like, so I think you're right. I think this would be a good game for people to. It's the first time I would say that this is a good game for people to start on.
Yeah.
Because the rules are easy enough to I think understand. The playbooks are tight, small, and concise. And then it leads you, I think it guides you fairly well into the improv part that's going to be a big part of playing a role-playing game.
Well, and there's two components to that I think are really interesting. Is that the first thing is it really does break down as a keeper what you should do in a way that I thought was fun to read. And I've actually flipped through the Monster of the Week book a couple times now, which I mean, I've read parts and then reread parts and all that stuff, and I feel like I kind of learn more about it the more I read through it. And I like revisiting this book for whatever reason, and I think as a person that's newly running a game, that's very helpful for them to kind of be so explicit in how you react as a person on the other side, the judge, the rules person, right? That's very nice. The second part that I thought was interesting is it's not, I mean, sure, you have a mystery, and running a pre-generated mystery is fine. But it tells you how to create mysteries and all that stuff. But I feel like the fact that that the dice help you collaborate on a story, it doesn't put the onus entirely on the keeper to create the story. And in fact, all the games I've played, this has been the most collaborative storytelling game that we had, because it really heavily relied on who got to tell more of the story, right? Like, and you guys succeeded a lot, so there wasn't a lot of like me using hard moves to kind of
force
certain things or have certain bad outcomes, but narratively both sides became interesting. Whereas I think in other games, failing feels like a punishment, where in this one failing just felt like a left instead of a right.
Right.
A left with you trip on left, but you also tripped on the road kind of thing, and that was really nice. So I felt like those two things were really honestly good components to the game that I like I said, I'm surprised that I'm this big of an advocate for the game, but I really can't say enough that, like, as a new player, if you're getting into games and you don't know where to start, this is a great place to start. Low cost,
and you've got familiar territory. Like, who hasn't seen, if you're into these types of games, Supernatural or Buffy or something? So, if you're old like me, Kolchak the Night Stalker, you know
that is absolutely one of my favorite shows.
Literally Monster of the Week, right?
Literally, yeah. X-Files, Supernatural, Buffy,
yeah. It just.
So
you've seen it, you understand how it works. You just have to play it, and there's enough rules to help you. There's not so many that they get in the way. It's good. I really like the system.
Yeah, I think in terms of like some of the other powered by the Apocalypse games, I think now isn't Blaze in the Dark kind of like an offshoot of PBTA? Like, isn't that the origin story for Blaze in the Dark?
Yeah, I think it is a PBTA influenced.
And then it basically itself created a Forged in the Dark kind of, a skeleton in which people
because it has playbooks and moves as well. It focuses on those as well, but it's a lot more complex.
Yeah, well, they introduced clocks, and apparently,
it's a lot more complex, and like part of the game, like in that, I consider that a hard game for the improv part, like because the one things that people always compare to Ocean's 11, which I've never actually seen, but I understand the premise, where if you get into a situation, you don't just ad lib how you get through the situation, you ad libbed how you planned a week ago to get through the situation. So it's like, the door,
you're role playing flashbacks.
Yeah, so like you say, like you're gonna break into a door. One of the things is and then you roll your dice and you say, I succeeded, and then you say, okay, so what happened is 2 weeks ago I set this door up so it has a blocker on the lock so it doesn't actually lock so we can get in. Or if you roll a partial success, it's I set it up so it did that, but one of these street kids saw me and told this other gang that we're breaking in. So that's kind of how that works. And that split second, what was your plan? I like when I was reading the book, I was like, oh, seems like a lot of pressure to put. Like I don't know if I could do that every time I rolled the dice.
Yeah, but it builds creativity, and I think I think that this, I have to say that I'm very rarely do I say that they're a bad role playing. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. I think you could have bad experiences role playing and stuff like that. But usually, like if you play the system faithfully, you could usually have a pretty fun time, kind of regardless.
Most games are good. Like most, even as much as I shit on D&D or seem to, which I always surprise myself that seems to be my take. Because I love D&D, especially a long time ago. So it always surprises me to hear like words come out of my mouth sometimes that are just like, meh. As much as I shit on it, like if you play a D&D game, you're gonna have fun.
Yeah.
It's just
hopefully have fun.
I mean, most of the time people will have fun. That sort of depends on the group you're with and like your GM. But chances are you'll have fun if it's a group you're familiar with. I just think that sometimes people get caught up that D&D should do everything, and I think there's better systems for different games. Like, I wouldn't want to try and play a Monster of the Week style game and D&D with 5e rules.
It would be very different, but I think, but the worst part about it is that I think that in terms of like hacks, because you have different hacks about every game, and I've always surprised at how many hacks exist for some games, like the fact that the Forged in the Dark has a million hacks. It feels like.
Well, everybody makes house rules, so really, what happens is people just started publishing their house rules. Really,
it's true. So needless to say, we don't really have a what is it called? Like a firm rating system, but this would definitely be 3 squablics out of 5.
Yeah, I was thinking of giving it like a 6.5, 7 out of 5. I really enjoyed it.
7.5.
I call it 3 goblins in a trench coat.
Yeah, this is absurdist ratings because I refuse to get into it like a star rating system. You know what I mean? Where
this is definitely two tables at a fine dining restaurant.
I'll give it 15 Milky Ways.
Yeah, there you go.
You can decide if it's the candy bars or the stars.
Yeah, it's definitely
stellar.
A game. It's beginner friendly. It's friendly for all types of players. I would have no problem trying to teach this to somebody. It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is after 2 sessions. We played 2 sessions. That's it. We played a one shot.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is a good game.
Yeah, I think it is a good game. And I think it gives the DM tools to help it be a good game, which I think some games don't do that.
I know some games just say, here you go, be on your way. Make the best of it.
They say, do this calculus to figure out how this hot air balloon vehicle works. And then
exactly.
just go forth and conquer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what will probably have to happen is we'll probably have to play I'll probably have to play a 5th edition game again soon, just to kind of like revisit the system and see just if we remember it. How do I say it? If we've been too cruel to 5th edition, and I feel like when the new edition comes out, that's probably the best time to try it again.
And again, I'm going to say this again. I have never not had fun playing D&D. Yeah, I've never not had fun playing D&D. Whether you chalk that up to just being good, in good groups or good GM or whatever, I can't think of a time I didn't have fun playing D&D. I can think of times I've been frustrated with the rules.
Sure.
But I can think of times I've been frustrated with the rules in a lot of games. It didn't make me stop playing it. Like we talked about Fading Suns last week. Like the rules made me stop playing that game.
Yeah.
I did not want to continue trying to wrestle with those rules. So and I think that says something.
It's fair. Okay. Well then, I think now that we've got our 6 candy bars and a soda pop for
I
our
said
rating
15.
system. I say 6 and a soda. How do you know that's not the same?
I feel like that's a good meal for our goblins in the trench coat.
It probably is.
It's 2
And
films
now our rating system is great. 16 candy bars and a soda, feeding our 3 goblins in trench coats. That's our rating right there.
Okay. Yeah, so that's, if anybody wants to make sense of that, that's fine. Whatever.
Brent gives it a thumbs up. There you go.
Apparently, my ability to make up words on the spot is also terrible with Squablic.
Squablic. Squablic sounded like something on Urban Dictionary. I'll give you that.
It could. I mean, I wasn't reading.
How do you
Urban
know it's
Dictionary.
not there already?
I'm not gonna go look. No, I'm good.
Yeah, we're not. No.
Thank you.
The last thing I looked up on Urban Dictionary gave me pause. So
everything I look up on Urban Dictionary. Wait. How do you spell squablic for future reference?
I was thinking like
just in case Brent wants to look at it.
So I would say if I would say SKWABLIC.
Yeah, like I'm gonna remember that, but okay.
Yeah, I mean if I'm doing that,
commitment for the bit.
Okay, commitment. I hope what we're probably going to find is it's actually some horribly racist term.
No, please, no one judges by our ignorance. That's my disclaimer for that.
Yeah, hopefully not, but we'll see. Okay, so I guess with that we can go ahead and say this has been another week, another fun time with the guys, and we will hopefully have something ready for next week's Monday live stream. So if you want to join us for questions, fun, playing, etc., remember we stream around 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So for all you night owl types that are looking for a hangout, come join us.
Sure.
We'll have Jeff turn on his velvety voice for you too.
It's not that velvety.
But yours doesn't sound like gravel anymore either, really. So
it's getting better. I feel like I'm at the tail end of it, where the tail end is just like a really long tail. So it's a very long tail, very whippy. Okay, so Jeff, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of us so I can stop talking about my voice?
Yeah, you can. If you want to find out more about our content and us, you can look for us on Threads, Twitter, or X, whatever you'd like to call it, Facebook and YouTube at Rollwise. And you can get us by email at rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And I believe that makes it my turn, which, as always, everyone, thank you for joining us. Whether you listen to us live on Mondays or on these recorded episodes, we appreciate you. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. We do our best to answer all the comments. And as we get more subscribers, we'll be doing other sort of projects like Discord someday, or that Patreon that we talk about fictitiously. But as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.